Hey guys, it's Adam from Pixel and welcome back. The other day, a couple of days ago, I was watching one of my all-time favorite stand-up comedy shows, Jamming in New York with George Carlin, which he recorded back in Gimli. Yes, I'm recording. I'll be with you in a sec. He says hi, by the way. That he recorded back in 1992, which means I would have been around 17, 18 years old at the time. I was born in 75. In my opinion, 1819 is prime George Carlin age. If you're around that age, then I recommend jumping on it immediately. That's an order, by the way. And one of my favorite skits in that show is where he starts by saying, do you notice in society we're always talking about the things that are different about us? The differences about our religious backgrounds, our ethnical backgrounds, our political backgrounds. But what about those things that every single human being has in common? Things that every person, no matter where you're from, has in common. And he goes off to list a couple of really funny ones. Like, for instance, do you ever look at your watch and then look at it again 10 seconds later because you can't remember what time it is? And then somebody walks up to you a minute later and says, hey, George, what time is it? And you go, I don't know. Or do you ever go to pick up a suitcase and you think it's heavy, but it's actually empty? And then you go, whoa! And for a moment you feel extremely strong. Or you ever go into a changing room or something like that, or a grocery store, and you look in the mirror under fluorescent lights and every single bump, bruise, scrape, scratch, pimple, zit, abscess you've ever had since birth reappear right in front of your face? And all you're thinking is, I gotta get the fuck out of here. Or one of my personal favorites, that it's literally impossible to sneeze while pissing. Like your brain sends a signal to your bladder saying, stop pissing! You might blow your asshole out. Well, that got me thinking. In this beautiful community that we have, this art community that we have, a lot of us come from different artistic backgrounds. Some of us are concept artists, designers, fine artists, illustrators, craftspeople. We work with different mediums. Some are sculptors, some are traditional painters, some are digital painters. Some like to sell our stuff at craft shows. Some of us like to work for full-time for different studios. Some people are freelance illustrators, etc., etc., etc. So when it comes to career advice, when it comes to technical training, yeah, sure. We all have something different. There's all differences in the way that we might pursue our careers. And I work with artists like that every day when I'm teaching. However, there are things, no matter who I've spoken to, the thousands of artists that I've had a chance to have conversations with and teach and share and learn from, that we all have in common. And when you get to know each other well enough, when you get a chance to spend enough time together, you start to notice that eventually everybody confesses to the same things, the same concerns. Because one way or another, we're all artists trying to make a career. We're all people trying to fit into society and to communicate our vision in the way that we do. And I would argue that one of the most important lessons that we need to learn as artists is how to master those technicalities and which technicalities we need to master in order to communicate our vision in the way that suits our brains the most. So that's what I want to do today. From somebody who's spoken to thousands of artists and had very personal conversations where we've had a chance to trust each other enough to be able to be open. And both ways, by the way, not just students being open with me, but I'm very open with my students as well, as I try to be as open as I can with you as well. So I can share some of those overall similarities that tie us all together as artists. No matter where you're from, no matter how successful you are, no matter how much you suck or how awesome you are, we all have these things in common. And the first is, quite obviously, we all want to be successful. We all want to have a future. We all want to, hopefully, unless you're just doing it as a hobby, as a side hobby, which is common enough, but we all want to go somewhere and achieve something from our skills. When you look online, when you look at different artists, how they prepare their portfolios, whether they start YouTube channels or they get into social media in the first place or not, what kind of social media they choose to use to better their exposure, to the way they draw, to the way they present themselves as people, to the angles that they use, either being more dramatic or being more optimistic and diplomatic, whatever. Ultimately, everybody's goal is, I want to get somewhere with this art. But I can also say with confidence that even though we all want this, I would say the majority of us, the large majority of us, are very fearful we won't achieve that. We might look online, we look on ArtStation, we look on different sites, we watch different artists on different platforms like TikTok or YouTube or Instagram, and we go, Jesus, I suck. Or they have something I don't. They're popular, I'm not. When I post something, I get 2 likes from my mom and my sister. They get 50,000 likes, right? And that's where imposter syndrome kicks in. This is where we start to feel like needles in a haystack, like one grain of sand sitting in the desert. Nobody's ever going to notice who I am. That feeling is absolutely universal. And from my experience, being somebody who's done this for so many years and who has reached a certain level of stability in my artistic career, I still feel this every single day. I don't give a shit how popular we are. I don't give a shit how good somebody is. Deep down inside, everybody's afraid that they're not living up to the potential that they could. This is extremely universal. And as such, one of the things that we tend to do is we tend to reach out to and consult with people who have achieved some level of success. They're just good at what they do. People love what they do. They get a lot of engagement in what they do. However, from my experience, because I work with and because I'm a teacher and I get a chance to work with so many different artists from like the widest imaginable range of styles and skill levels and technical backgrounds, the way to achieve success as an artist, ultimately, once you get past the fundamentals of just learning how to draw, is as unique as there are people on this planet. Every single human being will have a unique path to success. Remember that an art career is as creative a process as is creating art in the first place. And if I can give you a little insight in how to go about figuring out the type of career path to pursue, in my opinion, based both off of my own life experience and what tends to click with students trying to figure this out for themselves as well, in most cases, with a few exceptions, but in most cases, your career choice is not so much of a technical decision, it's more of a personality decision. It's understanding your personality and understanding how that personality can translate into certain types of artistic pursuit. What type of fundamentals you pursue, what type of career you pursue has a lot to do, more to do with your personality than the logistic choices that you make. And any logistic choice that you make, any technical pursuit, any practices that you do as an artist should reflect the career that matches your personality. Now, that's not to be confused with the beginning of your career. At the beginning of your career, I like to draw. I grew up drawing mangas. I grew up drawing Disney stuff. I grew up watching Steven Universe, and I want to do that. I want to do something along those lines. You haven't drawn a lot yet. So if you're just starting off at art, then just focus on the fundamentals, and any kind of education will generally be fine for you. That's the very, very bare bones beginning. But as early as possible, whoever you learn from, whatever learning resource you engage, I would recommend earlier than later having a conversation with a professional who can look at your work and see what you do and get an idea to know who you are as a person, to be able to offer you their professional opinion based off of your work on where your strengths shine. The things that they can highlight in your work that really stand out, that is a potential pursuit for you moving forward. I want to highlight an important observation from somebody who's been around a little bit longer than some artists, because I'm older, right? I've been in this industry for over 2.5 decades. And one of the things that I realized, or at least I thought about, it kind of dawned on me not that long ago was, if you think about the modern state of the art industry and who employs artists the most nowadays, it's usually the gaming and film industry. It's production work, right? And if you think about that, that is a very, very, very new industry. When I first started my career, when I first started working professionally, almost right away, the gaming industry, because 3D in gaming started to really launch itself. And I got gobbled up by the gaming industry very early on in my artistic career. But that wasn't at all my goal when I was just a young gamer geek who loved playing Atari games and Nintendo games and Genesis games and stuff like that. And I never thought in a million years I'd ever get a career in it. That really wasn't a thing. Game studios really weren't a thing when I was a kid. Video games existed, but video game companies were not mainstream. But right out of school, there were a bunch of gaming studios that were looking for artists, and I just got sucked into that industry. But prior to that, I mean, we're talking just a couple of decades prior to that, that didn't exist. So illustrators who worked for films were usually very unique, independent illustrators, right? The Geigers, for instance, who did stuff for Aliens, that kind of artwork, or the stuff you'd see in Star Wars or whatever. But these were traditional artists, very niche artists that got hired based off of their skill to be able to do certain things. Or Frank Frazetta, for instance, who did a lot of comic books and magazine covers and stuff like that. That's generally what they were employed to do. Or you'd get fine artists that would sell their paintings. They would do gallery work, things like that. And very seldom would they do specific task-based work. Usually, more often than not, they were producing unique works of art. But then, fast forward just a couple of decades later, now everybody's working in a production house, expected to work on a certain specific production, and all having to be able to adapt themselves to this workplace, to this corporate structure to work. And it's interesting how so many of us struggle to fit into that industry and feel we lack the competence as artists if we can't. That puts a big question mark over my head, because we weren't designed to do that. Artists were designed to have to be people who express themselves in a unique way. Art is by definition a unique form of self-expression. That's why artists are artists 99% of the times. But who are the ones who strive in those industries? Who are the ones who generally tend to get the most work, who find the most success in these big studios? It's more often than not designers, isn't it? Artists like Antonio Stappaerts and Feng Zhu, artists that have a very strong technical background, who are very adaptable. And in many cases, like for instance in Antonio's and Feng's cases, they don't necessarily identify as artists because being creatively unique is not their top priority. It's being technically versatile. You can pretty much throw anything at them and they can adapt themselves to that, which is a very admirable skill. But that's the skill that more often than not belongs to somebody who's a very strategic person, somebody who's very tactical, somebody who's very strategic, somebody who prioritizes doing anything it takes to achieve the thing that the client wants so that they can to make themselves as employable as possible. So my general advice to general artists is, whether you decide to make a career as a designer or not, if you want to work in the industry, taking a course or two with a designer can really get you in shape to be able to work in the industry, because it's a no bullshit tactical approach. It's about doing the unsexy work that gets you the jobs, that strengthens your foundation. However, for a lot of artists, if that's all you do, if all you are is a technical artist, unless you are a very tactical person who really thrives in this technical achievement, the romance and the desire to draw takes a nosedive. So there was a certain point where I said, if I want to maintain an artistic career, I really need to be able to approach it in a more organic way, more in a personalized way. And that's where I found my expression. This is where I found my style. This is where I found my niche. And I realized I'm not a designer. I don't have that mindset. And if you find yourself nodding your head to what I'm saying right now and saying, yeah, no, technicality, being tactical isn't really my strong point and I feel very alienated from my work, then reevaluate your personality. If you're somebody who's a little bit more impulsive, somebody who's who's a bit more silly, who's a little bit more expressive, then don't kick yourself for not being able to do that. And you might want to pursue a different type of career and adapt the career to your unique artistic style. Maybe it's a bit of both. Maybe it's purely artistic. Maybe you'll thrive in selling illustrations. Maybe you'll thrive in painting oil paintings and doing fine art. Or maybe, no bullshit, I need somebody to lay out the game plan. I need the blueprint. You give me a blueprint, I'm going to produce masterpieces for you. You have to be able to figure out where you fit into that niche. But remember, we all fear our future. And we all want the best out of what we're producing. None of us want to spend our entire lives dedicating ourselves to our passion and getting nowhere with it. And trust me, I feel this way every single day too. I don't give a shit if I'm a YouTuber. I don't give a shit if I'm a teacher. I am just as vulnerable as you are. The other thing that I feel we all have in common is a fear to fully express ourselves. And what's interesting about that aspect of our artistry and about our artistic growth is that it's a challenge that grows with time. It doesn't diminish, it grows. Because the more capable you are of expressing a certain facet of your story, of your background, of your life, of your tastes, of whatever, the more revealing you are being. And I remember, in my particular case, a very important turning point in my artistic growth was when I decided to do a short series of paintings. They're actually still on my channel. I did them years ago. It was a demons series where I did these different demons, and each demon represented a different negative aspect of humanity and human experience. So it was about shame. It was about pain. It was about depression. Each one kind of symbolized this different demon. And I really wanted the design to reflect a harsh reality. I didn't want I wanted to express it in a way where things that were humiliating visually, things that were difficult emotionally, things that were challenging socially, I didn't shy away from it. So for instance, like there was one particular that I was thinking about that was shame, and it's this tall, lanky demon where he has this kind of cast iron weight hanging off of his groin, essentially off of his junk. And what inspired that idea, because I was trying to think about where do we feel shame in our body. Shame is very often associated with our sexuality, with our vulnerability, with our nudity. And prior to this design decision, this theme decision, I was really scared on how people would respond to this because I'm a YouTuber. You're going to see this production live. I didn't explain what the thought process was behind it when I did it. I just drew it. But this was my thought process in my head, and I was very concerned about how people were going to react to these cringy subjects, right? But I did it anyways. And I drew this demon character. I wanted it to feel like he had this uncomfortable, humiliating weight hanging off of his groin, to kind of feel like it's pulling on him and creating this sense of anxiety, this public humiliation type of feeling, the ridicule feeling. I could empathize with that physical and emotional discomfort. And I drew it. And then I published the video. And I sat back and I thought, okay, how are people going to respond to this? And what really opened my eyes, despite the visual expression that I was making, there wasn't a single comment that went, that's kind of awkward, or what the hell's wrong with Adam? Zero. Everybody's response was, cool, neat, cool, I love that, that's so cool. People liked it. And it really helped me loosen up. It made me, it was that acceptance of this very candid expression of something very negative. And then I wanted to do shame, and I did gluttony, and I did disgust, and I did all these different things, always trying to tap into an element in my life that I could relate to this character, that I felt I was given permission from you guys, from my community, to be myself and I'm not necessarily a dark, shameful person. I don't live a shameful life in that regard. I don't need to feel embarrassed or shamed. But even if I did, it was a very accepting community. And to me as an artist, it gave me the courage to be able to push myself and express more and be bigger and bolder and more fluid with myself. And it also made me love my community. It gave me a reason to feel more bonded to my community of artists that I was a part of. And it made me realize just what an accepting community I was a part of. I don't think there's any other community on the planet apart from an artistic community, be it through music or through dance or through theater or acting or illustration or photography. I don't think there's a single community on the planet like an artistic community. That artists of every different genre are very, very open to the human experience. This is what makes us who we are. So our ability to empathize and our ability to accept a wide range of personalities is one of the reasons why we're artists in the first place. And as a teacher, just as a little reflection of this, and my contribution, my reciprocal contribution to my students and to the community, there's a lot of students that I have that produce artwork. Sometimes it's NSFW, not safe for work type of work, or sometimes it's about certain themes or things that when they first present it to me, I can see on their face that they're worried about how I'm going to react to it. Maybe they do sexy furries. Maybe they do themes that are very, very visceral and very dark. Sometimes they're very raw and very in your face. And I always react to that artwork from a purely artistic appreciation perspective. I know that 28-year-old who's drawing furries with big tits is thinking to himself, oh, Adam's going to think I'm a fucking 12-year-old. He's going to judge me for this. But I don't. I just look at it and I say, okay, if that's how you express yourself and if this is what's genuine to you, I want you to be the best version of that. Period. If you want to be dark, if you want to be gross, if you want to be idealistic, I don't give a shit. I just want to see professional work. And I want to help you achieve that professionalism. If you're going to be a furry, if you want to do something sexy, well then we need to learn about anatomy. We need to learn about animal anatomy. What's the similarities between human anatomy and any other mammal on the planet? Be it a whale or a bird or Gimli. He's back again. Hello, sir. Don't step on my microphone or you're going to cancel the thing. There you go. Sorry. He's coming to join us. You going to come sit with Dad? Hello. There you go. So whatever it is that you want to express artistically as an art teacher and as somebody who prides himself in his ability to adapt himself to the artistic needs of different artists and who has experienced many, many different walks of life and many different personalities, I thrive in diversity. I thrive in unpredictable people in unpredictable circumstances. That when somebody throws me a curveball like that, I love it. It to me, being able to work on work like that with different artists, no matter what the theme, to me as a teacher and as an artist, is another opportunity for me to expose myself to a different form of artistic expression, different priorities, different demographics, different target audiences, different techniques altogether. When it comes to artistic expression, one of the things that you want to train your brain to do more and more over time is slowly but surely allow your artwork to help you develop a greater and greater confidence in self. Because self-expression is what makes your artwork beautiful and unique. And you want to wear that uniqueness on your sleeve like a badge of honor, right? One of my a perfect example I use for this all the time is Brad Bird's rendition of Edna Mode from The Incredibles. If you want to impress, you must express, darling. Who he voices himself very successfully, I might add. She's so unapologetically herself, man. She's just who she is. The thing that makes her such a good character is she's just overflowing with integrity, isn't it? And he actually, I don't know if I mentioned this in earlier art talks, but he based that character and her presence, her personality, on his impression of Bette Midler when he met her for the first time. Bette Midler is if you're a younger artist, she's a very famous actor back in the day. She's legendary. Even though she wasn't some tall, skinny supermodel, when she walked in a room, there could be 6,000 people in that room. Every eye turned and looked at her when she walked into the room because she just had such presence. She knew who she was. She knew how she looked. She was just so confident in her uniqueness. And I'll go on to say this as well. No matter what style of work you do, whether it be dark Souls-like fantasy like myself, or you do sexy furry art, or if you do ornamental mandala tattoo art, there is a demographic, there is an audience, there is a community who are passionate about that style of art. And all they're looking for is better and better versions of that. So being able to commit yourself to and be able to embrace and go all in with confidence, to fully commit to this form of expression that just feels right to you, gives you the time and the confidence to practice and improve. Whether you're doing this type of artwork or that type of artwork, all of them lead to the same final product: a strong understanding and grasp and application of fundamentals, and a unique form of visual communication that connects to your unique audience in a way that they desire. And that's where you start to find your niche. That's where your portfolio starts to become stronger and stronger. This is how your online presence starts to improve as you become a more and more expressive member of this type of artistic community. I would love to encourage all of you right now to pause this video and go online, go on Instagram, go on a different platform, go on Pinterest, and look up any of the craziest criteria you could. Just look up, do an image search for some type of art that just sounds completely off the wall. I would argue that the majority of you are going to find not one example, but many examples of that art style. And by seeing that, you start to realize, holy shit, there's a place in this world for literally anybody. And if there isn't, if you try to do a certain image search and that image search connects to something that you find personally meaningful, like you look up Swedish lobotomy chefs art, something stupid like that, and this is something that you're very passionate about because this is a combination, you love lobotomies and you love Swedish culture and you love cooking, and you want to combine that into a form of artistic expression, and it doesn't exist because it's too obscure, then my dear lady or gentleman, you just found your niche. You have just discovered how you are going to be a pioneer in a new artistic style, because people love uniqueness. People love people who love themselves, no matter who you are. So my advice to you as an artist is, no matter what you are, no matter where you're from, fully commit to yourself. And the sooner you do that, the sooner you'll find your unique form of self-expression. The sooner you'll find the type of career that best suits you, whether you be a designer who's more technical minded, who's more strategic, or somebody who thrives in unpredictability. Another really good example of this difference in personality that can both lead to great places is comparing to world-class game directors. Hidetaka Miyazaki of the Souls series, and Fujito Ueda, who did Shadow of the Colossus, The Last Guardian. Both of these directors have credited each other down the line of being huge inspirations in the production of each other's work. However, as directors, very different. Hidetaka Miyazaki was always known for being very game design focused. Maps, strategies, interconnectivity of the worlds, lore that tied into different visual elements in the game. Although he was a very adaptable and very versatile and very flexible director, he was much more structured in his approach. He was much more technically focused. as a director, as he continues to be today. And if you compare that to somebody like Fujito Ueda, Fujito is an artist, first and foremost. If I could describe his direction process, it's bringing order to chaos. He focused on the artistry, and just like Hidetaka Miyazaki, he was known for being extremely hands-on to the point of almost being considered a micromanager. They weren't. They were very active, physical, hands-on directors, both of them, and both equally geniuses in my opinion. But Fujito was an artist. He came from the art and the artistic expression, the way something felt. A good example would be how he went about the animation of the horse, of the mount. He insisted that horse be animated by hand. No motion capture at all, because his philosophy, which I agree with 100%, was that it wasn't about capturing realism. It was about making that movement feel the way a horse running felt. He wanted you to feel the movement. He wanted you to feel the rush of the gallop of that horse. And that required doing something that might not be entirely realistic and might require a ton more labor. But in the end, it was about how that movement made you feel. Both of them admitted that each one of these directors were instrumental and incredibly inspirational in each other's work. But they worked in very different methods. But the ends justified the means in both of their cases. What they both had in common, however, was that they both trusted themselves. They both trusted the process and had confidence in who they were through trial and error. Both of them had successes and failures. Both of them tried certain things and tried to adapt their game direction and their production process to their own personal styles, and some things fell flat. They had to learn how to work within a team and how to direct. But in the end, they both came out the end very successful, very celebrated directors. And to you, I recommend doing the same thing. Don't worry about where you are right now. Just identify with it. Commit to who you are. And in the end, you will develop the tools necessary for you to be able to execute that vision. But make sure you don't lose sight of who you are, and make sure you don't lose sight of that vision. And you'll find success. Eventually. When you're 95, like me. So listen, like I always say, I love you all with all my heart. If you want a good laugh, you want to forget about life for a little bit, go watch Jamming in New York with George Carlin, an absolute comedy legend. Rest in peace. And happy painting. Take care.